Hello and welcome to Premiere 006 of the Introduction to Meditation and Internal Map of Reality. Now, these premieres are intended to provide you with the full collection of videos that we will be going through. Unfortunately, we have been able to get back online with Rose. So for a short while, we will be doing these premieres and we'll be doing the live sessions. So you can use the recorded premieres for your own use, or you can join us in the live, whichever you choose. Okay, so here's what we'll be covering in this premiere tonight. We'll be doing our 1-minute meditation as normal. And again, this is a practice of establishing the routine of doing your meditation. From that point, you should feel comfortable now doing longer meditations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10-minute meditations. And after section 5, which is next, we're doing part 1 tonight, Frequencies of the Brain. The material here will help you understand what happens as you meditate and lower your brainwave frequencies. Following that, we'll do a guided meditation. We'll do the color meditation again. It's Rose's favorite, so we'll do that again. I'm thinking next week we'll switch back to the walking through the body one. Then, after the color meditation, we will then go on to part 3 of session 4 for the internal map of reality. This is the section on filters, and we'll be continuing on that. Filters are very, very important. As I've mentioned before, the filters in the internal map process information before you are conscious of it. So your conscious reality is made up of what is remaining after it's been filtered by your map. Okay, now we won't introduce a new exercise. We'll just have a discussion about your exercises. In the live stream, we'll have a more interactive thing. And then we have 2 bonuses. We have the time filter. We're going to redo that one because I think it's important. And then we'll have bonus 8, which is something I've become very aware of and I think is very important. I'm calling it the essentials for life, and understanding what keeps us alive energetically on a physical plane. What is it? What are the essentials? Okay, well, that's the agenda. And what you can do now is just relax. We're going to go into the 1-minute meditation. And remember, you can do the meditation with your eyes open or closed. If your eyes are open, just focus on something inanimate in front of you. And when you get distracted by a thought, just politely go back, gently go back to looking at whatever you were focusing on. Same thing with your eyes closed. You might notice a little fuzzy dot with your eyes closed, a little artifact from your optic nerve, and just focus on that gently. And when you get distracted by any kind of thought from the past, present, or future, just gently disconnect and go back to looking at your fuzzy dot. If you don't see a fuzzy dot, your job then will be to look for the fuzzy dot. Okay, so we're going to go into our 1-minute meditation now. Welcome to the Introduction to Meditation, Session 5, Part 1, Frequencies of the Brain. And these short presentations will be shown on Wednesday, 6 p.m. on the Rose777 and Steve and D. Oliver showings. Now, we will be offering these sessions for free for the first hour. In the second hour, we have a Patreon-only group. So the idea of these Intro to Meditation are we've broken them into small sessions, typically 3 parts for each session. And today we're going to be going into something called frequencies of the brain. So let's go into it. Okay, so far we've done 5 segments. We did a review of the review of the history of meditation in Western society, looking at its roots from the East. Then we took a closer look in session 2 at how the West analyzes meditation, and mainly it was from the more medical approach and scientific approach. Then in session 3, we took a deeper look into the relaxation response and realized that relaxation is really the balancing of 2 separate and distinct nervous systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And then in the 4th session, we took a look at balancing the left and the right brain, and we introduced some acupressure techniques for balancing the key meridians. Now in this session, we're going to be looking at the frequencies of the brain. And there are 4 primary frequencies that I will be talking about: the beta, the alpha, theta, and delta. And here listed are the sort of cycles per second that you would normally expect to see these bands listed in. We will also be talking about cerebral lateralization, where someone becomes more fixated to one side or the other. And this is quite common. It can be just through habit, or it could be through injury. And what meditation practices and techniques that we might have to balance it out. And one technique, I just mentioned it for curiosity's sake, not necessarily promoting it, but something for you to look into for your interest's sake, is something called Binaural Beats. As normal, we have our resources. We have these Wednesday presentations, and we have our Sunday preview sessions at 3 Eastern. And those sessions are really just to give you a look ahead and an opportunity for you to pose questions to me. Then we have the recordings of these meditation presentations. If you are looking for previous recordings and you can't find them, just beam me out an email and I will respond. And for those of you who are using Facebook, there's the NSTCMA location where you can get more information. The 3 groups for Patreon are the $5 a month introductory group. And those are the people that want to be a part of all the information, but are really mainly just more for curiosity, and it's a chance to get introduced to it. Then it's the $10 a month people who want to participate on a more interactive level for all of the exercises and content. And then the final $20 a month core group, which is a group that I will be working with more closely as we proceed. And those people in the $20 a month group are telling me that they want to not only learn this information, but they may want to practice it and share it with others. One resource that you could look into is a book that I produced some years ago called Lovebirds in a Cage. And it's really looking at all the ways that we cage ourselves and we cage the things we love. Why is it that we tend to cage the things we love? So if you're interested in this book, you can go to smashwords.com, and probably the easy ways to find it is to search for me, Steve and Oliver, or the title Lovebirds in the Cage. When I was there searching for Lovebirds in the Cage, brought up a lot of other options, but if you search for my name directly, you'll get the book. And there's an option there where you can load in the first portion of the book for free. And the first portion is Introduction to Meditation. So just a few quick notes. My approach, Steve's approach, I'm really interested in enhancing life, not necessarily prolonging it, although they both tend to go together. But I'm more concerned with providing people the opportunity to have a higher quality of life while they're on this planet. And one of the ways is by working with our timeline, and I introduced the concept of root cause event, and we'll be working with those as we go forward. The whole idea is that this meditation experience can be transformative. It can be very resourceful. And I'm hoping to encouraging you to work with this material to experience a total transformation of yourself. And one of the ways to achieve this transformation is through the study of the internal map of reality. It's our guidebook to ourselves. And we can, through meditation and through just observing ourselves, get feedback. I call it the feedback loop. And when we do this, we immediately enhance and improve. It's part of our DNA. Whenever we focus on something, our tendency is to improve it. So, bottom line, it's very simple, but it is hard work. You have to do it. If you're having some difficulties, go back to the earlier sessions, particularly the sessions 1 and 2 of the concepts. And home exercise will give you the best results. And, we're talking about this loop, and I'll mention it again. I know you'll probably say, oh, here's that graph again, because it's so important. You start with your values at the top, and whatever you think is important, you will subconsciously and unconsciously try to achieve those. You'll develop beliefs or strategies to meet those desires or values. And then, of course, there will be outcomes. So you will be able to look at the results, the feedback, at the results that you're getting in your moment-to-moment, day-to-day reality. Are they matching up with what you want? If not, what do you do? Well, this is what this course is about, looking at ways of making the adjustments if needed. If they're not needed, don't make them. If you're happy with the results you're getting, leave it alone. But if you would like more resourceful results, then this is the areas that you need to work in. So in the previous sessions, I introduced the idea of meridians, and I just want to mention that again, that there are 12 meridians, and it's worthwhile looking into. These are well documented, they've been around for thousands of years, and it's very easy to learn how these points work and how to use them for balancing and health. But you can also use food. So here's this chart showing you that there are yin foods and yang foods. And you can begin to understand whether your requirement is for more yin or more yang in your life. And you can just go to foods and look at the foods you're getting and then balance them out. Another way of balancing is through something called aromatherapy. So you can get essential oils, and these essential oils carry frequencies which go directly into the midbrain. So if you look back at the chart, you'll see that if you smell an essential oil, it goes directly into the olfactory senses and has an impact. Very, very powerful, but very, very gentle. So what are some of the terms I would like you to become familiar with? The term frequencies. And under frequencies, there's two aspects of frequencies. There are cycles, a complete cycle, and then there are phases. And we'll be talking about that. Then here again are the four bands or the four levels of brainwave frequencies that we'll be working with: beta, alpha, theta, and delta. If you may recall that we were looking at the 4 barriers to learning, and these could be enemies, things that will stop you in your track, or they could be allies, things that will propel you in your learning and push you through those barriers and take you on to the next level. And the first one I identified is fear. If you are fearful, i.e., allowing false evidence to appear real to you, it will be an immediate way for you to fail to look at your reality. And it's what I call premature closure. And you may, in fact, select an unresourceful path because of fear. You don't want to go that way. You'll go the way that appears to be less fearful. And then the second one I pointed out was knowledge. People who think they know it. As you begin to understand more, particularly about these areas of meditation and personal growth and behavior, you may think you know it. I may think that Steve knows it. And that's the moment that I will stop learning. The moment you think you understand something, that's the moment that you will stop learning. So be like Sherlock Holmes. Keep questioning. Keep moving to find more resourceful paths. Now, the third enemy, the third ally is clarity. Now, people who have a sense of clarity, I call it a false sense of security. You stop questioning, you think that you have achieved your level, and you have, again, this false sense that there's no more for you to look for. This again leads to premature closure of your investigation and can become very unresourceful. So the moment you have that sense that everything's good, I've got it under control, I know it, that's the moment for you to take a deep breath and to look around and to continue to challenge yourself. Take off that mask, look around. Don't go blindly forward thinking that you know the correct path. So those are the 3. We have one more to do, which I will cover in the next session. So, as I said, clarity, you need to take off the mask so that you can go forward in life with your eyes open. Well, that's the end of session 1. And then we'll pick up in session 2, looking at bilateral movements. And the idea of bilateral movements is, again, to maximize the frequencies of the brain. Thank you for following along so far. And I will be available to answer any questions. And please, if you have questions, please forward them. But again, stay tuned for part 2. Okay, with your eyes closed, sitting comfortably in a chair, we're going to start walking through the colors of the rainbow. And I'd like you to start with the color red. And just let whatever comes into your mind float in. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And just think about the color red. And if you want, you can imagine that when you breathe in, you're breathing in the color red and filling up with red. And when you exhale, you're letting the color red leave your body and go back into the room. Red. Now we're going to move from red to orange. Just start thinking about the color orange, and whatever comes to your mind is right. And again, if you want, you can imagine that as you breathe in, you're breathing in the color orange, and as you exhale, you're letting the color orange come out and fill the room. And if you have a little bit of that red left, you can let that out too. Orange.
now we're going to move to yellow. Yellow. And just as before, there's no right or wrong way. Whatever comes to your mind about yellow is right. And if you want, you can imagine that you're breathing in the color yellow, filling up with it, taking as much as you want because it's free. And as you exhale, you can let out the color yellow into the room. And if there's any orange left, you can let that out too. Yellow. We're going to keep moving now to green, brilliant green. And you can pretend that you're breathing in the color green and filling up with it, brilliant green, and letting it exhale out as you breathe out. And again, if there's any of that yellow left, you can let that out as you breathe out. We'll move now to blue. We'll move from green to blue. And if you want, you can breathe in, fill up with blue, and as you exhale, you can just let it come out and fill the room with blue. And as before, if there's any of the green left, you can let that out too. Blue. We'll keep moving now across the rainbow to purple, deep purple. And just let whatever comes to your mind about purple float in. And again, if you want, you can pretend you're breathing in the color purple and breathing it out as you exhale. Letting out any of the blue that might be left. Finally, we'll move to violet. Violet's almost like seashells, like mother of pearl. And you can imagine you're breathing in fresh violet, filling up with that color and letting it leave your body as you exhale. And of course, if there's any purple, you can let that out too. Violet. And to finish up this little guided meditation, we're going to combine all the colors together and create a brilliant white light. Brilliant white light. All the colors together balanced. And you can pretend you're breathing in this brilliant white light, filling up with it, and exhaling it out as you breathe out, filling up the room with this brilliant, clear, bright, white light. And at any point you feel you want to open your eyes and come back, you can.
Hello and welcome to the Internal Map of Reality, Session 4, Part 3, The Power of Filters. Now, we've been doing some work in the first two sections, identifying what filters are, and then we looked at some specific filters. And there are others, and during the next few sessions, I will be identifying some other filters, but I identify a few very key ones. But today what I'd like to do is to go a bit deeper into how we can use filters to our advantage. So the first step is beginning to recognize that we have them. The next step is to be able to observe them in ourselves and others. And then the third step is to be able to identify filters that we can use to be more resourceful and more skillful and to take us closer to our goals in life. Now, We can think of filters as being a continuum. So there's a range, a spectrum of how these filters can be applied. Or think of it like a dimmer switch. So we can apply the filter full out at level 10 and it is running like full tilt, or we can dim it down so that it's hardly not being applied at all, or right to off so that the filter is not being used at all. So that's a real skill that as you become more knowledgeable about your personal filters and how you use them, you can then start to use them like this. You can turn them up and down as need be. And I'll be going into this more in the future, but this is a skill. And this is a skill that I think highly resourceful and skillful people, successful people do either automatically or they understand the power of their filters. And again, I want to stress that these filters are not specific to any content. They're kind of universal approaches, so it works on any input. Works more effectively on some types of input than the other, but for instance, a filter, a polarizing lens filter works on all light. If the light is already polarized, it works differently, but basically it will function the way it functions. It's not dependent on the content. So I'd like you to make these filters selectable so you can become a resourceful. How do you do this? I think it's through mindfulness, through your meditation. And if you look at this example here, you have input coming in, called here as a stimuli. Then you act on it subconsciously, mindlessly, without any conscious awareness of what you're doing, and you get a reaction. So you have a stimulus and then reaction, and you don't really have an opportunity to affect the result. I have been in this situation quite a bit, and I think that when you're looking at how to control something like, say you're fasting, you want to control, you want to fast, or you want to change a habit, this is where this really becomes quite clear. Now, if you apply mindfulness to this, you get the same stimuli, but you allow your awareness, your mindfulness, to be able to consciously tune in or tune out the filter such that you can respond to it consciously and more appropriately. So you get a response rather than a reaction. So we want to become less reactionary and more responsive, more cognitive. And how do you do this? Well, by doing courses like this and by meditating. There's something that happens when you meditate and you slow things down. You become more observant of all these things. So how do you do this? So you pick a filter and say it is your, well, let's pick a good filter here. Say it's your solution filter, and you want to be able to switch between being a problem finder and a solution finder. Well, it's really quite simple. If you create a frame or recall a frame where you were being a solution finder, if that's what you want, or if you want to be a problem finder, you pick a frame where you were really, really astute at identifying what the problems were in that process. I used to be a problem solver and a computer programmer, problem solver, and I was really good at it. And I could diagnose problems really well. So that would be a really good frame if I wanted to get into a problem finding mode. But if you want to get into a solution finding mode, visualize yourself, create a frame, fill it as we have done in the past when you make a power frame, learn to internalize it, and then if you want, you can then associate it as a to an external if you want, but make it a representation of flipping your filter. So again, if you want to flip between being a problem finder and a solution finder, what do? Visualize a frame where you're doing the outcome you want and then internalize it. Let's take another example of the timeline. Now, there are many reasons why you may want to have your future in front of you, looking ahead. And there are reasons why you would want to have your timeline in front of you, either with your future to your right and your past to your left, or reversing it with your past to the right and the future to your left. If you want to flip your timeline, and there are reasons to do it, which again, I think that would be handled in a bonus topic. But how do you do that? Well, you can visualize your future in front of you. Right? You can create a frame of you traveling towards your future, looking ahead, or you can visualize a frame, say if you want your future to be in front of you to the right, you can visualize that and then activate it. Now, we haven't talked a lot about specifically how to activate it, but you're already doing it automatically when you do, for example, the walking through the body guided meditation is a great example. But anyway, play with that, and that, in fact, is your next exercise, exercise 9. Pick a filter. Look at the range of the filter. Most of the filters have a range, such as being a solution finder, being a problem finder, and it's a range in between there. Sometimes you can be in the center where you're not really one or the other, but most of the filters are this continuum. Pick a filter and practice flipping it. So I'll do a little video on that. Perhaps I'll talk about all the main filters that we were addressing here. But this is one you can have fun with, play with it. And I don't think I was going to say, end up with the filter in the position where you found it. But I would say if you're keeping a journal and when you start analyzing your filters, make a note where you think you are most of the time in these filters, so that after you do the exercise, if you choose, you can put the filter back to where you would normally have it. So if you're normally a problem solver, leave it there until you consciously see a reason to move it. Or if you're a solution finder, put it there. So that will end our little session on filters. Our next session will be on the timeline. This is a nice juicy one, which I will be using the timeline knowledge for you to be able to what I call heal or clean your timeline. And we're going to be going into that in great detail. So that's it. Please contact me if you have any questions, and play with these little exercises, have fun, and we will see you in the next session. Hello and welcome to bonus topic number 7. We're going to be going into something that I call time filters. Now, we've started talking about filters in our internal map of reality sessions, and I thought it would be appropriate to have a little bonus topic about some various aspects about filters. Now, when we are looking at filters In particular, this one that I'm interested in sharing with you, called the time filter. We have to understand how the subconscious treats time. Time for the subconscious realm is different than it is for our day-to-day conscious activities. We'll talk about that. And so here's some aspects of the time filtering process that we have that I think is interesting. Something called the direction finder, how you orient yourself to your timeline. The frequency counter, we're counting our activities and then connecting it to the frequency of events similar to it on our timeline. What's possible and impossible, we determine what's possible in our reality based on the outcome or lack of outcomes in our timeline. And then finally, I'm going to talk about something that I call a root cause event. And I personally believe, and there's lots of research to support this, that any issues we might have in our current reality, in our current day-to-day, stem from a specific event in the past, a root cause event, that since that time you changed, something happened in your past that created such an impact that from that point on you were different. It caused a transformation inside of you, and you reacted differently. Sometimes some of these transformations are good and resourceful. We're interested in the transformations from root cause events that are in fact unresourceful and that may be limiting you in your ability to get what you want on a day-to-day basis. So we'll look at root cause events. The bottom line here is that if there was some magical way of healing that root cause event from the past, then you in the present will be healed. And it's only by healing that event from the past that you can heal yourself today. So let's go into it. So as we've been talking before, our conscious mind is really only 10% of our realm, and that the subconscious does a whole whack of things that we just don't have the time to do. We're busy. And in the conscious realm, if you see at the top up here, they talk, and I kind of agree with this in this slide, that willpower is something of the conscious mind, that you will things to happen and your subconscious participates. But then look at the next three: long-term memory, logical thinking, and critical thinking. All three of those are connected to your timeline, right? Your memory is in your timeline. Your logical thinking can only happen when you compare things to when things should happen, and your critical thinking. So it's all very much a time, present, past, and future relationship. However, your subconscious doesn't work that way. Your subconscious only looks at cause and events. So when a frame, we'll go back to frames now, when a memory frame is recalled, your subconscious treats it the same whether it is something happening in the past, currently in the present, or projected to the future. Your subconscious treats all frames equally. So in essence, your subconscious doesn't parse out time in the same way as we do on our day-to-day conscious level. And this is important because those of you who do have root cause events that were traumatic in the past, they hurt as much today as they did in the past, and maybe even more. Okay, so let's look at the direction finder. So what I'd like you to do, if you are interested in participating, is to orient yourself towards the future. For you, where is the future? Is it something straight ahead of you? Is it to your left? Or is it to your right? What direction is your future. And this makes a difference. And we'll be talking about this quite a bit in some of our other sessions. But let's just put it this way for this particular discussion. If you are someone who has pointed straight ahead, that makes you a very direct, goal-oriented person, doesn't it? If you are a person who saw your past or your future either to your right or to your left, this makes you a more of a pensive, thoughtful person. So you're going to look at your timeline as if it's laid out in front of you on a screen or on a table, and you're going to assess your whole timeline before you make a decision. So this kind of effect on the way that you process information is directly related to how you see, how you orient it your direction. And there's other things in here, but I think that's one to just get started with. Figure out for yourself which way, where, which direction do you think the future is. Now, remember, there's no right or wrong, and you can change these for specific effects. Let's look at this one, a frequency counter. Now, this is one that has a couple of different uses. If something has happened 0 times, has never happened in your past, so you look at something and it has never happened before, that has a very special meaning. And people who are faced with a frequency of 0 when they are making up their minds to do something will react in one of two main ways. One, if it has never happened, if it's a 0, they may decide that they want to do it. Wow, I've never done that before. I really want to do that, and get excited and motivated to do something that has a frequency counter of 0. There are others that when they see a frequency counter of 0, they say, no, I don't think I can do that. I've never done that before. So this is very important to know if you are a never do it again, or have never done it and want to do it, or have never done it and will never do it. Which type are you? And this can be flipped. You can flip this around for your various effect. The number 1 is a very interesting one. So if someone sees that an event has happened once before, again, there's at least two possible ways this person can react. And this will be consistent. This is the way they will react most times to the number 1 event counter. They may say, oh, I've done that before. I am not going to do it again. So there are those people who will only do something once. So once they hit a counter of 1, that's it. They won't, or they don't want to, or they resist, or make a fuss. And there are others that say, oh, a 1, I've done that before. Let's do it again. That was whatever. Let's see if I can improve it. Or it was fun. Whatever rationale they'll put when they see 1 counter for an event, they'll be more motivated to do it again versus those that see a 1. It's like those people who never want to watch the same movie again. And me, I can watch the same movie over and over. Then the number 2 and more is a very interesting one. When it's a number 2 or more, these people will either become more committed or less committed. So some people, the more often they do something, it has a reverse effect in making them not want to do it anymore. They become more and more resistant. Now, there's another way this frequency counter works. Sometimes for people, they need to hear something or be asked to do something a certain number of times. Some people will do something on the first frequency counter, but some need to hear it twice, some 3, and possibly some 4. And the frequency counter, unless they have been talked to or suggested to 4 different times, they will not act. So this is like a convincer. How many times do you need to hear something before you're convinced to act? Now, here's the key. If you're working with someone or with yourself, and you ask them to do something very simple, note how many times you have to ask them. You might have to try a couple different things, like, oh, pass me the butter, and they don't do anything. You say, oh, I really like to get that butter. They still don't do anything. And you say, hey, Joe, please pass me the butter. And they go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, here. And they pass you the butter. Took 3 times. Now, here's the kicker. That's the way Joe will be most of the time, regardless of the immensity of the decision that they have to make, or no matter how trivial it is. Something as trivial as passing the butter, they had to be asked 3 times. Something as big as buying a house, they got to be convinced 3 times. Very powerful thing. So know where you are on this particular on your frequency counter. Now, there's different aspects of this, but those are a couple of the big ones. The number 0, the number 1, and the number 2 or more. Let's look at this other one in regards to time, and this has to do with sequencing and where you position yourself on the timeline. And this will, for some people, determine whether they think something is possible or they think something is impossible. You will look at yourself and you will say, oh, I can't do this because of where you are in the timeline. You may say, well, I am too young to do something, or I am too old to do something, right? And that will be possible or impossible. You might say, oh, because of my age, this is very appropriate for my age, I will do this. Now, this becomes even more and more significant as you age. You will tend to limit what is possible based on where you are in your timeline frequency, timeline range. So as you get older, you may find yourself limiting your possibilities. Okay? But it's purely something that you have put into your timeline. So here's the big one that I think we can do a lot of work with. Your root cause event. So in your timeline, there's an event that shapes you as you are today and will shape you as you will be tomorrow. So it has all the what, where's, when, why's, and who's, but more importantly, when. So when you go along your timeline, there will be a singular root cause event that may have been reinforced many times after, but there's a key one, that if you can neutralize that root cause event, it will take away the pain and suffering and limitations of all the following occurrences of that event, anything similar. So you might have an event in your past that limits you. Then as you go along in your current present state, you will match up anything that you're perceiving in your present future with the possibility of that event. If you get a match, then it will determine how you react. Now, again, as I said, if it's a very resourceful reaction, you become strong and you tackle the issues and you go forward, fantastic. Leave it alone. But if it's a root cause event that causes you to have fear, anxiety, to limit yourself, and to not go forward, if it becomes a very unresourceful effect of your root cause event, then you may want to look at it. Now, there are lots of therapies that involve actually reliving root cause events. The approach that I've kind of grown to doesn't do that. I'm not a proponent of reliving trauma. However, there is a way of releasing the trauma or releasing the energy associated with a root cause event without reliving it. And so this is what I call cleansing or clearing your timeline of all limiting root cause events. Okay. Now, I'll be honest with you. It does take work. It does take time. And in my last bonus topic, I talked about the fact that the more you practice, the more you do this, the better you get at it, and the more effective you become at cleaning your timeline. Very resourceful people spend a lot of time being resourceful, and they spend a lot of time at achieving their levels of success. They don't just sit home and wait for it. You've got to go and get it. So we'll be talking about this timeline meditation. It's a guided meditation to clean your timeline. Now, you will probably, if you choose to do this guided meditation with me, you'll probably enjoy it. But what I want you to be able to do is to do this meditation on your own and to make variations of it. And I'll give this little story. I was doing some work in a group home, and I was doing something like the timeline, not exactly, but kind of like it. And one of the young fellows said, "Oh, I've got one for you, Steve. Can I tell you my guided meditation?" And he told me a guided meditation that was fantastic, and I must try to replicate it. It's called Melting the Snowman. And the snowman was all of the things that limit you. The snowman was all of your pain. The snowman represented all the things that froze you. And then what he did in his guided meditation, which is rather beautiful, he melted the snowman slowly. And as the snowman melted, all of your tensions, all of your fears, all of your anxiety went away with the melting snow. Very beautiful guided meditation. So this is another example of working with an imagery to deal with a root cause event. But we'll get more into that later. So here's the thing. When you look at your timeline, there will be events. And so we have a way of traversing your timeline by utilizing your subconscious. You will get good at using your subconscious. You may not remember the details of your timeline, but your subconscious mind does. Your subconscious mind remembers all of the details, even though you may not remember. Now, here's the trick of how this works. Your timeline is there all the way, and your subconscious knows it. Your subconscious may protect you from information that may harm or hurt you. So you may not be able to consciously see the information on your timeline, but your subconscious does. Your subconscious has said, "Oh, I don't want to show you this because it hurt you before, and I don't want to hurt you again, so I'm going to make it invisible. I'm going to filter it." So your subconscious filters out painful content, but that painful content still affects you. So these root cause events, until healed, will affect you. You just can't see them. You can't see what's causing you to react the way you are, but it's still there. Okay, I hope you understood this. So bottom line, your subconscious can see your entire timeline. You consciously have a filtered version of your timeline. You tend to only see the parts of your timeline that are rosy, rose-colored glasses. Well, that's it for your quick little bonus topic. We obviously will be going into the time filter in great detail later on, but I thought it'd be worthwhile to share this with you to give you an idea of where we're going in the future with the timeline filter. Okay, that's it for today. Welcome to bonus topic B008, and this is a series of short videos on topics that vary but are kind of related to the introduction to meditation and the introduction to the internal map of reality. Today's topic is a little bit away from what we've been talking about. Today, I'm going to be talking about the essentials for life. And this is a way of prioritizing what the things are. Now, these essentials that I'll be talking about today are really ones that are related to our physiology, our physical ability to survive. So, looking at our laptop, these are the essentials. And again, I'll just point at this point, this is just my view of it, the things I've run into over the decades of, doing things like Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, studying therapeutic massage therapy, traditional Chinese medicine, and, other kinds of disciplines in a related area. So this is Steve's version. It's not meant to be medical advice. Okay, so I'll be following from the essentials of breath, water, and nutrition, and I'll be looking at a fasting as it relates to nutrition. And then the way that we get energy into our body through glucose versus fats. And then we'll look at something called cellular respiration. If you don't know what cellular respiration is, you probably should take a look at it. When we're looking at breath, we're looking at our ability to process the necessary ingredient from the air. And from my research, it seems to be mainly the oxygen that we are needing, although there could be other nutrients in the air. Our ability to survive without sufficient air is very minimal. It's down to 2 minutes. Where you look at these lists of mammals, it ranges from 2 hours to 2 minutes, and there we are at the bottom. I don't know whether I could hold my breath for 2 minutes. Maybe a minute. I don't know. I haven't tried in a while, but definitely I need fresh air all the time. So that's the number one essential ingredient for life. The second one that I think is key is water. We need water every day. And you can see on this little slide here that by the second day, we start experiencing dehydration effects. And by the third day, we cease to be able to sustain livelihood. So air is a matter of minutes. Water, it's a matter of days. Now let's look at the third ingredient, nutrition. When we look at nutrition, there's something strange that happens. We're going from needing air in minutes to water in days to being able to fast for over 30 days and longer. I saw things where people were able to live only on water for months. It's not unusual, and I have done my own multi-day fasting with just water. So what is going on here? All of a sudden, we know that we do need nutrition. It is important, but how is it that we go from air, needing it in a measurement of minutes, water measurement in a few days, and we perish, but we can go without any nutrition for weeks and months. So what is going on here? Well, when you look at it, it is actually something that is really quite unusual. There are recognized benefits from fasting, and it's become part of a therapeutic process all around the world. Everywhere you see this. And fasting is considered to take place after 18 hours of not eating. And we'll talk about what we mean by not eating in a moment. And after 18 hours, between 18 and 24 hours, your body goes into something called autophagy. And autophagy is a process where your body begins to process the stored energy and actually creates the necessary energy to be able to sustain life for a prolonged period. And as part of this process, things start to happen. Your digestive health improves, your brain function improves, and this is actually a process that's used to cure some very, very death-threatening diseases by just fasting. So how is it by not eating nutrient we actually heal, we actually get better? Let's look a bit deeper at this. This autophagy, it is something that is extremely positive. You can see here on the bottom that it's considered a way of increasing your longevity. And it has to do with removing cells that are no longer functional, and the body reuses them. And it's considered a survival technique. And it says here short term, but I don't know. Short term is a relative term if you're talking people being able to fast for weeks, months, without any nutrient, just by processing what is already in the body. So if you don't know about autophagy, you should really research it. But here's the point. It only happens when we fast. Okay? So what is going on here? So we have two ways of getting nutrients and energy into the body. One is through eating carbohydrates, and it supplies fast energy. But it says here it's a limited source. But really what they mean is that you cannot store carbohydrates. If you are using carbohydrates or a glucose, basically, sugars, you can't store them. Your body can't store sugars, glucose. It can use it as a fuel, but it can't store them. It can only store fats, and fats are a complete form of energy packet. But the body can live off fats for a long period of time. So we can assume that when people fast, they're living off of their body fats. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, this means that we have two ways of providing energy to the cells. We can do it through carbohydrates, we can do it with fats. The point here is you can only do one or the other. If you're using carbohydrates, i.e. sugars, glucose, you cannot use fats. Okay? Now, I'm not too sure if vice versa is true. You might be able to eat some fats and sugars, but from my understanding is that your body does one or the other. And it has a preference for eating sugars first, and when all the sugars are removed from the body, then the body starts to think, and that is considered fasting, and that's that 18-hour time frame that typically within 18 hours you consumed all the sugars in the body. So when we look at it, so what is the body actually using for energy? And it turns out that it's something called an ATP, and it's a triphosphate, and little phosphorus molecules that get snapped off a chain of 3. And when these phosphates molecule gets knocked off, it creates an energy charge that is used by the cells. This is the energy cells use. Okay? And the body has to manufacture these ATP molecules and chains and store them. And where does it store them? It has to store them as basically a preform in fats. So fats are ready to create this. So your body stores fats, can't store the ATP molecule itself, but it can store all the components necessary to create these. So this is what happens. So there's two ways of getting energy. So one is something called cellular respiration, and this is what happens when you use carbs. You eat something that's basically sugar, and there's a nice apple pie showing here. And look at the formula. It has one molecule of glucose has carbon, has hydrogen, and has oxygen. CHO, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Okay, so when the cell, this is a single cell here, takes one molecule of glucose, okay, it produces 36 molecules of ATP, which is actually quite a bit. They're quite powerful. So one molecule of sugar produces 36 of these ATP tripeptides. However, there's a cost. When the cell creates these ATPs, it generates 6 carbon dioxide molecules. But it also has to digest 6 oxygen molecules, and that's the circulatory thing you see here. We take in oxygen and we put out carbon dioxide. This is why we need oxygen. This is why we die if we don't have oxygen within minutes. So this process is happening at a very rapid rate. So each cell, for every molecule of sugar, requires 6 oxygen molecules and 6 carbon dioxide. Now I want to notice there's a byproduct. And the byproduct of creating ATPs in this way is of water vapor. So there are 6 molecules of water generated for every molecule of sugar. Where does this water go? This is why when people are on a heavy carb diet, they will tend to accumulate water. And water in the body is related to a lot of inflammatory diseases. I know I had a problem with excess water on my ankles, and I would get swelling around the ankles and so on. And this is associated with the consumption of carbohydrates, or it's a byproduct of cellular respiration. This is why when we fast and we go into autophagy, when we're digesting fats, it's much cleaner. We don't have any byproducts when we digest fats. So this is associated with the keto diet. There are 5 benefits of eating or fasting or being in autophagy. One is that you age in a more healthy way. You have more longevity. The metabolic health improves. Your brain health improves. That is suggested by not having excess inflammation in the brain, reduces the chance of Alzheimer's. Cancers are removed because dysfunctional cells are destroyed and consumed. Quite often, cancers can be removed when you use fats to generate the energy. And finally, a big one, heart health. So a lot of ailments, including diabetes and heart disease and cancers, are associated with the consumption of sugar and the fluids. So just to repeat again, when you use fats to produce the ATP molecule, you do not produce the amount of carbon dioxide, you do not produce the amount of water in the body because fats are ready to produce the ATP. So let's look at this. Here are the countries, some selected countries, and the bluish line indicates the proportion of the population that eat meat, and the green is the proportion that eat vegetables or are vegetarian. So the only country on this list is India, and India is a very high percentage of people that eat vegetables. About, well, it's saying here 25%, so I don't know how these percentages add up. They don't add up to 100. But, so there must be some other class here. But India has the highest percentage at around 25, over 25% are vegetarian. And these other countries are very high, 70% or higher, are traditional meat consumers. So your logic would say, which of these groups should have the longest lifespan, the longest longevity? Who should live the longer? The people that eat primarily vegetables or the people that eat primarily meat? Now, I have been educated up until now to believe that people on a vegetarian diet live longer than people on a meat diet. But what I found when I looked is the opposite, is that these countries have a longer lifespan. So in North America, US, Canada, the average life expectancy is around 80 years. In India, it's like less than 70 years, similar to Iraq here. Now, here's India, and they're under 70 years, and the USA is closer to 80 years. Japan is the highest at over 80. And they happen to also be the highest salt consumers, so they're a meat and vegetarian and seafood diet high in salt, has the longest longevity. So I don't mean this to be beating up on vegetarians, but I just want to have the clear reality of what happens in the body, that when we eat vegetables, we go into the cellular respiration that produces, as a byproduct, carbon dioxide and water. And those two have to be eliminated, otherwise it causes illness. When we thrive on fats, there is less or no byproduct of water and carbon dioxide. I wanted to share this because I have personally witnessed the amazing results of when you restrict carbohydrates in your body. And that's something I've had to do for the last 2 or 3 months with significant results. So I just want you to research it. And again, I'm not doing this to put a negative spin on people who are vegetarian, but I did want to put out the reality that our bodies do perform better when are in a fat-burning mode called autophagy, and it's actually the mode at which we do significant healing. When we fast, we actually go into that mode. Okay, I'd be really interested in any comments that you might have about this, and think about it. I'm willing to discuss it. Again, this is not medical advice. It's just something I personally observed.